In today's video, we're going to cover everything about lipotoxicity, including what it is, what biomarkers you can test to see if you're suffering from it, and how you can fix it. I first learned about lipotoxicity a couple of years ago when I watched some of Dr. Nadir Ali's videos. But then I had a personal experience with it when my husband and I both started the carnivore diet at the same time, and about 18 months later, I had lost almost 50 pounds and he had lost nothing. His blood pressure was going up, his fasting insulin and fasting glucose were super high, his hsCRP, which is a systemic inflammation marker, was through the roof. We were so confused, and we thought the solution was to add more fat because that is the advice that's given a lot in this community. But I don't think that works for everybody, because when we did that with my husband, he got worse. So we ran an 8-month experiment on him where we included a lot of water fasting and some exercise, and then just a regular old carnivore diet, no extra fat added, but just regular carnivore. And we were finally able to get him down by about 50 pounds. I spoke about this experimental protocol at the Collaborative Science Conference in February. I gave my speech, and then afterwards, Dr. Nadir Ali actually came up to me and he said, "I think your husband was suffering from lipotoxicity." And that was the first time I really connected those videos that I had watched of his from years ago and what was going on with my husband. So about a month and a half after the conference was over, I interviewed Dr. Ali for my podcast, and we had a really great discussion about lipotoxicity and everything that goes into it. A couple of weeks after I posted Dr. Ali's interview, I was contacted by Emmerich, so I had him on the podcast, and we talked about he and Maria's experiences with lipotoxicity in their coaching practice. Both of these conversations are excellent. I will link to both of them at the end of this video, but they're also very long. Each of them is about an hour long. So in today's video, I'm going to distill down those two conversations into this simple, easy to understand, much shorter video so that you can get all of the information you need if you think that you are experiencing lipotoxicity. Be sure to stick around until the end. I have a free lipotoxicity cheat sheet resource for you, and I will share with you how you can get that at the end of this video. And if you would like the full protocol that we used with my husband to treat his lipotoxicity, that is a part of the troubleshooting chapter in my new book, Complete Carnivore. Complete Carnivore is a complete in-depth guide to the carnivore diet along with 80+ carnivore recipes. It is coming out on November 4th, and it is now available for pre-order. I will put the pre-order links in the description as well. So let's first start off with a caveat. I am not saying that everybody following a keto or carnivore diet needs to lower their fat. I think that high-fat carnivore can be highly effective for many people, and this conversation about lipotoxicity is not for everyone. Lipotoxicity only affects a small portion of people that are coming to keto and carnivore. And for these people only, they will temporarily need to lower their fat. We're gonna go over exactly what to look for to know if you're suffering from lipotoxicity here in a minute, but just know this conversation is not for everyone. I would argue it's probably not for most people. So please don't burn me at the stake or anything for suggesting that you need to lower the fat. Every person is an individual and will need to adjust their diet's macronutrient composition accordingly. And that's why I think it's so important to do blood work and to do these other tests. Because, for example, my husband, we wouldn't have known that anything was wrong except for the fact that he wasn't losing weight. It was only when we took a peek under the hood with blood work, DEXA scans, and blood pressure measurements that we knew that something was really wrong. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's dive into this with a definition of lipotoxicity. Lipotoxicity is when you have met your personal fat threshold and your fat cells are no longer able to store anything else. They are overstuffed. Every person has a unique personal fat threshold. So you're born with a certain amount of fat cells, and then you create new fat cells until you're about a toddler. After that, you're just filling and emptying the same fat cells for the rest of your life. This is why you can have a case where you have a very thin, petite person that is type 2 diabetic and has poor metabolic health. Yes, they may be thin on the outside, but they've already met their personal fat threshold, and they cannot store any more fat in those overstuffed fat cells, so then their metabolic health declines. Conversely, you can have an obese person. Let's say they're like 200 pounds overweight. But then when you check their blood work, their fasting insulin is nice and low, their fasting glucose is normal, and their triglycerides are like 80. In this example, this person has not met their personal fat threshold. And while they're overweight, they are not metabolically unhealthy. Now, I will say that that doesn't happen often. I think most people that are morbidly obese are also metabolically unhealthy, but there are some people out there that are not metabolically unhealthy. That does happen. According to Dr. Nadir Ali, different ethnicities are going to have different average personal fat thresholds. He mentions that Caucasians tend to have higher personal fat thresholds than, say, an Indian population. This may be the reason why different ethnicities will see varying effects to their health eating the exact same food. So now, before we dive into how you become lipotoxic, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, LMNT Electrolytes. LMNT is an electrolyte brand that has 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. You may not be losing weight on carnivore right now because of lipotoxicity, but once I get to the part of this video where I share with you how to fix it, you're gonna start losing weight pretty quickly. My husband lost 50 pounds in 8 months. And when you're losing weight that quickly, you really need to make sure you're taking care of your electrolyte levels. So one of the best ways you can do that is just by taking some electrolytes. It's super easy. I love LMNT because they come in these convenient packets. And this raw and flavored is just the minerals. No sweetener, no filler, no flavors. But if you do want something that has a little bit of, tasty flavor to it, they also have a lot of delicious flavors. This is their lemonade salt. I think they have a limited amount of this right now because it was so popular. They have watermelon, grapefruit, tons of different flavors. So what you would do is take one packet in 16 to 24 ounces of water. You can do more water if it's too salty for you, less if you enjoy that taste, and drink that 1 to 2 times per day. When you're losing weight, I think it's advisable to do at least 1 packet per day. You could do up to 2 to 3. Some people can do even more, it just depends on you. Right now, LMNT is offering my viewers a free sample pack with any order. So you can head to the link in the description. It's drinklmnt.com/JennyMiddich. That's DRINKLMNT.com/JennyMiddich and get your free sample pack with any order today. So next up, how do you become lipotoxic in the first place? Typically, most people are becoming lipotoxic by eating a standard American diet that is high in ultra-processed foods, vegetable seed oils, and sugar over a long period of time. When you eat that way for decades, your fat cells can become overstuffed and you can begin to suffer from lipotoxicity. So now we know what lipotoxicity is. We know how you get it. How can you know if you're suffering from it? Well, there are several measurement tools that you can use. The first and the freest is if you're not losing weight on a carnivore or ketogenic diet. For most people that switch over to keto or carnivore, they see pretty profound weight loss and improvements in their biomarkers relatively quickly. But if you've been on keto or carnivore for at least 3 to 6 months and you are not seeing any weight loss, or perhaps you're even seeing weight gain, you may be suffering from lipotoxicity. But that's not the only thing to check because there could be other reasons why that is happening. There are specific blood work markers that you can take a look at as well. So first, you're going to look at a lipid panel. If your triglycerides are above 100, your HDL below a 50, and if your triglyceride to HDL ratio is above a 2. Then we're going to move into blood sugar markers. Fasting insulin in the double digits, so a 10 or up, fasting glucose of a 95 or higher, then calculate a HOMA-IR if your HOMA-IR is above a 1.3. The way that you can calculate HOMA-IR is take your fasting insulin and multiply it by your fasting glucose and then divide that by 405. If you're dealing with international units, if you're not in the United States, you would do fasting insulin times fasting glucose and then divide that by 22.5. Next up is GGT, which is a liver function number. You're looking for a GGT that is higher than 30. And then finally, adiponectin. This is kind of more of a niche test. You don't necessarily need to get it done if you get the other tests done. This one can be a little bit more expensive, but adiponectin is high when your fat cells are healthy, and your adiponectin goes down when your fat cells are overstuffed. So if you do this test, you are looking to see that your adiponectin is in the single digits. All of these blood work numbers can indicate that you have lipotoxicity. If you have 1 or 2 that are a little bit off, not really a big deal. If you have a lot of these numbers that are what we just discussed, then that can be an indicator that you're lipotoxic. The final way you can determine lipotoxicity is by seeing how much visceral fat you have. There's a way that you can do this for free by just doing a waist to height ratio. You can do this measurement by first taking your waist measurement and then dividing that by your height. You want that number to be a 0.5 or less. If it's higher than that, that can be an indicator of visceral fat. You can also just visually look at your abdomen area. Do you have kind of like a distended pot belly? Is it kind of hard, like not soft and squishy like the subcutaneous fat on your body? Is it kind of hard when you push on it? If so, a lot of that can be visceral fat, and you really don't want much visceral fat. Fat is not supposed to be there. Visceral fat happens when your fat cells are so overstuffed that your body has to deposit that extra fat in places it shouldn't be. You can't just have all of those extra fatty acids and triglycerides floating around in your blood. So your body starts to deposit these fats on your liver, your pancreas, your internal organs, the trunk of your body. And you're really not supposed to have much of this. Less than a pound is ideal. Now, if you want to get more exact measurements than just a waist to height or looking at it visually, you can do either a DEXA scan or an MRI. DEXA scans are much more accessible and less expensive than MRI, and they are pretty darn accurate. They're not perfect, but they are much more accurate than those body composition scales that are out there. I have found those wildly inaccurate for visceral fat readings. I'm going to put a link in the description to DEXA.com's website. You can just put in your zip code and find a body composition DEXA scan near you. So there's two different kinds of DEXA scans, the body composition and then the one that doctors use to see if you have osteoporosis. The one that you want is the body composition DEXA scan. Prices are anywhere between $60 to $250 on average per scan. At the place that I go, I get them for between $60 and $75, and I have seen DEXA scans as inexpensive as $39 per scan. So let's go over all of those numbers again quickly so that you can get a really good idea of how to determine if you're lipotoxic or not. The first is no significant weight loss or even weight gain following any sort of diet, even if that diet is low or zero carb. Next, if your triglycerides are over 100, your HDL below 50, your triglyceride to HDL ratio above a 2, your fasting insulin in the double digits, fasting glucose 95 or higher, your HOMA-IR above a 1.3, your adiponectin in the low single digits, your GGT 30 or higher, and or if you have high levels of visceral fat of 2 pounds or more. So as you can see, lipotoxicity has very specific biomarkers that indicate you're suffering from it. So this just goes back to that caveat that only a certain population of people need to worry about lipotoxicity. Again, most people that go on a ketogenic or carnivore diet are going to see weight loss and improvements in their biomarkers in a pretty short period of time. It's only when you've been doing keto or carnivore for at least 3 to 6 months and you're not seeing any weight loss, any improvements in your biomarkers, that you may be suffering from lipotoxicity, and it's time to make a few adjustments in what you're doing. So now that we've discussed what lipotoxicity is, how you become lipotoxic, and what specific biomarkers you can test to see if you're suffering from it, let's talk about the solution. This is not a death sentence. This does not mean that you have to go super low fat for the rest of your life. There's just a few tweaks that you need to implement to get everything moving in the right direction. First off is nutrition. You need to lower the fat and raise the protein. If you're not following carnivore, if you're doing more of a keto diet, you need to keep your carbs to 50 grams per day or less. Dr. Ali mentioned a hypothetical person when we were doing the interview where he talked about like 200 grams of protein, 50 grams of carbs, and 75 grams of fat. That's just a hypothetical person, but you can see that you still are doing a pretty high level of fat. This isn't a low-fat diet by any means. I think the easiest way to accomplish this is just to stop adding extra fat to your meat. Don't add any butter to your meat. Don't drown your meat in extra fat. Don't eat any kind of pemmican or anything like that. Stop doing that and focus on eating the fat that is on your meat already. You can also try replacing one meal per day with a cut of meat that's a bit leaner. So instead of doing a fatty ribeye steak, you could do a sirloin steak. Instead of doing bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, you could do boneless, skinless chicken thighs, or maybe a chicken breast. The key here is that you don't have to eliminate all fat. You definitely don't want to do that. But you do want to lower the fat enough to allow your body to start tapping into its own fat stores. When you're doing a carnivore diet, you're getting your amino acids and building blocks from the protein that you're eating. And then you're getting a lot of energy from fat because you're not consuming carbohydrates, which is where you normally are getting your energy. But if you have a lot of extra fat on your body, that is energy. You want your body to tap into that so that you can burn it. If you have 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 pounds of extra fat on your body, you do not need to consume a bunch of fat in order to have energy when you're doing a carnivore diet. You literally have it stored on your body. As far as macro composition, you can aim for 60% fat to 40% protein, 50% fat to 50% protein. Just use a food tracking app to help you dial all of that in. The next thing that you can work on is fasting. Dr. Ali advocates for longer fasts than Craig Emmerich does, but in general, if you can throw in a 24 to 36 hour fast once per week while you're implementing this protocol, you're going to be in good shape. You will also benefit from incorporating intermittent fasting every single day. So I guess the standard starting is like 16 hours of fasting to 8-hour feeding window. You can do an 18-6, you can do a 20. It just depends on what works best for you. The final item to dial in is exercise. Dr. Ali is a big fan of zone 2 cardio and strength training, and he thinks you should do at least an hour per day. If you don't know anything about zone training, here is a crash course. Take your age and subtract it from 220. That's going to be your max heart rate. Zone 2 exercise is fat burning, and it doesn't take much of a heart rate increase to get there. You're in zone 2 when you're at 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. Let's do a quick calculation. Let's say your max is 180. You're going to multiply 180 by 0.65 to get the bottom bracket of your zone 2. So that would be 117. Then take 180 and multiply it by 0.75 to get your upper bracket. That would be 135. So you would know that at 180 max heart rate, you need to be between 117 and 135 beats per minute in order to be at that zone 2 range. That is barely breaking a sweat and totally doable. Now, an hour per day seems like a lot, so if you can get started with 1 to 3 days per week and work your way up slowly from there, that'll do the trick. This combination of lower fat and higher protein paired with some fasting and exercise can resolve lipotoxicity quickly. Take my husband, for example. We didn't know he was suffering from lipotoxicity, so all we did was the fasting and the exercise. My husband would do a 10 to 14 day water fast once a month, and then he would throw in some zone 2 cardio and some strength training. And then he just did a regular carnivore diet. He wasn't like adding butter to things or anything like that, but he would do fatty steaks. In 8 months, he was able to lose 50 pounds just doing that. In our latest DEXA scan, we saw that his visceral fat had gone from 9 pounds to under 4 pounds. He's at 3.95 pounds of visceral fat now. His triglycerides are 94, his HDL is finally starting to climb, and his fasting insulin is now in the single digits. So it's entirely possible to heal yourself of lipotoxicity and to start reaping the benefits of a low-carb diet that most other people see immediately. Let's quickly review the solutions for you. First off, nutrition. You need to lower the fat and raise the protein. That doesn't mean no fat, just aim for leaner cuts of meat and don't add extra fat to your meat. Next, incorporate some fasting. Try to do an intermittent fast of at least 16 hours per day with an 8-hour feeding window, and if you can, throw in a 24 to 36 hour fast once per week. If you're an experienced faster, if you can do longer fasting, you can get the lipotoxicity under control faster, but just, if you're not comfortable with that, aim for just small fasts. That will also do the trick. It'll just take a little bit longer. Finally, incorporate movement. Try to do zone 2 cardio 1 to 3 times per week and make sure you're adding in strength training as well. So how do you know you're moving in the right direction, and how do you know when your lipotoxicity is resolved? Well, there's a few ways to know. First off, if you're starting to lose weight again, one of the key factors in this is people, not losing weight or gaining weight when they're doing a ketogenic or carnivore diet, really any diet. If you're not losing weight on it, that's a really good indicator that you may be lipotoxic. So when that scale starts to move again, you're gonna know you're moving in the right direction. You should also retest your biomarkers every 3 to 6 months. Honestly, I think you should retest every 3 months just to make sure you don't need to make any tweaks. What you're looking for is triglycerides that are below 100. You want your HDL to be above 50, and you want your triglyceride to HDL ratio to be below a 2. You want your fasting insulin ideally to be between 2 and 6, but if it is in the single digits, you're moving in the right direction. You want your fasting glucose to be a 95 or less. That one I'm not as concerned about because sometimes people on a carnivore or ketogenic diet will have slightly higher blood glucose. But as long as everything else is moving in the right direction, I'm okay with that. You want your HOMA-IR to be below a 1.3. You want your adiponectin for a male to be above a 15, and if you're a female, you want it to be above a 20. And when you're looking at the GGT, you want that to be mid-teens or less. Finally, do another DEXA scan, MRI, or just do your waist to hip measurement and see that that visceral fat is going down. If all of these numbers are moving in the right direction, then you're making progress, and just keep doing what you're doing. If you don't see any improvements, or if your numbers continue to decline, you will need to lower the fat a little bit more, do a little bit more extreme fasting, and or add in some more exercise. You're just going to need to make some tweaks. I know this was a lot of information to cover in a short period of time, so if you would like my lipotoxicity cheat sheet completely for free, head over to my Instagram page, follow me over there, and then send me a message saying you'd like the free lipotoxicity cheat sheet. On that cheat sheet, I lay out all of the biomarkers to look for, the strategies to heal from lipotoxicity, and have some places for you to kind of fill out and track what's going on so that you can see when it's starting to resolve. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you'd like to have more content like this. And if you'd like to take your support a bit further, pre-ordering my book, Complete Carnivore, is the best way you can do so. Pre-orders are a huge deal for first-time authors, and I'm really hoping to get this book onto every bookstore shelf in America on release day, and pre-ordering is the best way you can help me do that. I'm going to put a link to Dr. Nadir Ali's interview right here, and I'll put a link to Craig Emmerich's right here. Watch these if you'd like to get into the nitty-gritty and kind of learn about the mechanics behind fat metabolism and lipotoxicity. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.